Hey guys, I'm back with another Friday the 13th the game video, and in today's video we are going to be ranking the top 5 Jasons in the game. So I have not did this yet on my channel, and I've had some people suggest it. They want to see what my list would be. So yeah, basically that's it. So let's get right into the video. Alright guys, coming in at number 5 we have Jason Part 8. Now, the reason why I ranked him at number 8 is mainly because he is a very good destruction Jason. Now, of course, if you don't know what that means, destruction is one of his strengths, which means that he can break down doors faster than all of the other Jasons. It was either between him or Jason Part 4, but Jason Part 4 is kind of more of a slower Jason, in my opinion, than Part 8. Yes, Jason Part 4 can run, but he also has a weakness of traps, which is a big deal in this game. I think traps is a big deal for Jason in the game, so having less of them kind of sucks. Also, Jason Part 4, also his shiftability is one of his weaknesses as well, and shiftability is a very useful thing for Jason as well. So I chose Part 8 to be at number 5 because his weaknesses aren't really weaknesses I would care about. Like, actually only one of them I do care about though. The other two, not so much, but one of them I do care about, and that is his sensibility. That's one of his weaknesses. But the thing of it is, the weakness, I mean the sensibility already kind of refills fast, even without it being your strength or weakness. So having a weakness for having a weakness of sensibility, it's not a big deal because it's still, it still kind of refills kind of fast, It's not as bad as like shiftability, how fast that takes when it's your weakness, when it's a Jason's weakness. So it's not a big deal because you can still use his sensibility really often, even though it's his weakness. So yeah, that's why he's coming in at number 5. Alright my friends, we are coming in at the number 4 spot, and this is Jason Part 2. Why do I love this Jason? Well, for one thing, he has a lot of traps, man. I'm telling you, 7 traps is amazing for this Jason, man, because you could just basically trap everything in the entire map and keep the counselors from escaping in any way, man. And it's amazing. And with his morph being his streetness as well, it's amazing because say if a counselor steps in your trap, you can morph over there, kill him, and then go after another counselor that's near that counselor you just killed, or of course find another one. And of course, if another counselor turns around and steps in another trap, your morph ability refills kind of fast, so you could just morph straight back over to the other counselor that stepped in your other trap. So it's a pretty darn good Jason, and on top of that, he can run as well, which is very amazing for a Jason. So yeah, his weaknesses, shift ability being his weakness, kind of sucks, but kind of makes him balanced because hit morph and traps is his strength, and he can run, so it's kind of balanced, I guess. So yeah, so he comes in at the number 4 spot, my friends. Okay guys, we are into the number 3 spot, and this is going to be Jason Part 3. Now, what makes this Jason pretty darn good? Well, for one thing, it's his weapon strength, and another thing, he can run, and another one of his strengths is also grip strength. So, I mean, grip strength is not a big deal anyway because it kind of matters about the counselor too, on how good their composure is. So it's not a huge deal, but it does help out to getting kills, grab kills. But of course, it's not going to help out whatsoever if they got a pocket knife. So, but anyway, I put him at number 3 because he can run and he has weapon strength. And his weaknesses are, most of his weaknesses is stuff you wouldn't care about. Of course, his weaknesses is stun resistance, which of course, that's not a big deal for a Jason player like me, because if you get used to using Jason's block button a lot, it's not a big deal, man. Getting stunned is not really much of a big deal. Anyway, another weakness is his sensibility, which, of course, like I said about Jason Part 8, it sucks, but it's still not a huge deal because it still kind of, refills pretty fast. So, and of course, another weakness of his is stock, and that's not a huge deal either. I don't use stock really often, that much at all. Like, I use it maybe once a match. I don't know. It's just whenever I want to trick a counselor, So, yeah. I mean, most of the time it won't even trick the counselor. I mean, sometimes they'll still think you're chasing them, And of course, like I've said in my tips and tricks to using Jason video, you can also use stock to trick them into you morphing outside while they're standing outside beside of a window waiting for you to morph outside, and then they go back into the cabin. And you could use stock to trick them, because usually the counselor will wait for that static on their screen, because when you morph it shows that static. But if you also say you're in the cabin and you go into stock mode, the counselor will think that you're going outside, you're morphing, so they'll go back into the cabin and you can grab them and kill them. That's basically the only time I'll use stock, so having it as a weakness is not a big deal. But other than that, I think this Jason's pretty good, and you could certainly do really decent with him, especially if you're a new player to the game. So this Jason and the number 1 spot Jason, it was a hard decision between these two, and I made some final decisions, and I decided to put Jason Part 5 at number 2. And so anyway, what makes him a good Jason? For one thing, all of his strengths is amazing. He's got a strength of stock, which of course, like I said, I don't use very often, but it's still pretty good, I guess. Another strength is he can run, which is pretty good for a Jason. Running is a useful thing for a Jason character. But of course, if you can get used to slow moving Jason characters, then it's not a big deal. But also another strength is the throwing knives, man. I love the throwing knives in this game. It is my favorite thing to do, man, is hit counselors with throwing knives, as you've just seen. Yeah. Basically, throw knives is a big deal for me because I use them a lot, man. I use them often. I just, throw them constantly, because if a counselor doesn't have thick skin on, only 2 throwing knives make them limp. They walk slow. Of course, if they got a first aid spray, they can use it, but, if you got a Jason with a bunch of throwing knives, hitting them twice again is not a big deal. But yeah, it's a way to slow down the counselor, and if you get really used to hitting counselors with it, then it's not a huge deal. Yeah, so basically that's why he's coming in at number 2. I'd like to also point out that all of his weaknesses are stuff that you don't care about, like I said already. He doesn't have weakness of sense, he doesn't have a weakness of morph, he doesn't have a weakness of shift. It's amazing. He's a great Jason to use. He doesn't have weakness of any of those useful things you need to use in the game. So, like, he's the best Jason like that, for that, man. Like, if you don't like weakness for any of those 4 things you use in the game, then he's the Jason you go for, man. He's a fast-moving Jason, and, he's his shears. If you have his shears, it insta-kills, man. I'm telling you, it insta-kills. Like the kills that go with it. So, he's a pretty good Jason. You guys should definitely try him out and see how good he is for yourself. Okay, so now we're down to the number 1 spot, and this is probably going to shock a lot of you. And of course, this is Jason Part 6. I respect your opinion if you completely disagree with this, and I respect if you don't like him. I understand, but I really think this Jason is amazing. He fits all of the things I like in a Jason. He is good with throwing knives, good with sensibility, and good with shift. Those are three things that are really important to me for a Jason. Like, I use shift a lot with Jason. I use shift constantly, man. I use throwing knives constantly, and I also use, his sensibility constantly. So I can understand if you don't agree with this Jason, being number one, but he's just one of my favorite Jasons, man. He's amazing. I always do really good with him. I've used him the most out of all Jasons. And now his weaknesses. I don't like that morph is one of his weaknesses. That is the problem with him. I use morph often, and when you're first starting out with the Jason, morph is the first thing you get, and it takes a little while before you get shift. So it can be kind of frustrating at first until you get shift, because of course morph takes a while to actually refresh when it's his weakness. But of course, if you can get used to using those throwing knives, you can slow down the counselors with it. Now of course, his other weakness is he can't run, but like I said, if you can get used to that in a Jason, then you're golden, man. It's not much of a big deal. And of course, his other weakness is defense, which I'm pretty sure that's just for blocking, right? I think defense is basically just how well you can block, and that's not really a big deal for me either, because he still blocks very well. So it's not a huge deal, man. It's really not a huge deal for a Jason. So yeah, I mean, it's basically the reasons why I'm putting him at number one. He's a really great Jason. I loved him in Jason, in the 6th Jason movie, man. Jason Lives. He was amazing. It was definitely my favorite movie in the series. And yeah, that's basically why I'm putting him at number one, man. He's a great Jason, good stats. I do very well with him. And of course, he doesn't have a weakness of traps. So that's a good thing for a Jason as well. He doesn't have a weakness of most of the stuff you care about, except for morph, of course. But if you can just get used to that, then you're fine. So yeah, that's why I'm putting him here at number one. I think he's a really good Jason, and if you guys want to, you should definitely try him out and see if you can get used to him, because he'll turn out to be a good Jason. I hope for you as well. And of course, you new players that come to the game, he may be a frustrating Jason to use. Most new players, I would recommend using like a running Jason, a kind of a fast-paced Jason. Of course, Jason Part 6 is kind of fast of a Jason, but he's not really that fast until you get his shift ability. But of course, once you use his shift, you gotta kind of wait for it to refresh. And then, you can just use throwing knives to slow the counselors down, like I said. So yeah, guys, that's basically why he's coming in at number one, like I told you guys already 100 times. So yeah, there's my ranking of the top 5 best Jasons in the game, completely based on their stats, in my opinion. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Do you agree with my list? If not, let me know what your list is. If you do agree with some of the placements that I did in the video, make sure to let me know in the comments as well. I am very interested to hear your guys' opinions on the best Jasons, and I would like to know what your guys' favorite Jason is to use. I got a lot more Friday the 13th the game videos planned, so be ready for that, and subscribe if you are looking forward to more of my content. So yeah, catch you guys later in the next video. Thank you for watching.